Good morning, everyone. We are back here. Dave King and Matt Martin at your service. And on the phones, as promised, we have Congressman Jodey Arrington. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Dave, Matt. Good to be with y'all and great to be in West Texas.
Well, I hear you, and it's we haven't talked to you in a while. It's always good to have you on our program. So are you in Lubbock or back in Washington?
I'm in Lubbock, and, we're going to have to get back to Washington for I'm a conferee now. We've got the House and Senate, passing the Farm Bill, and now we've got to reconcile the two and get it to the President. And I'm grateful to be a member of the conference committee that's going to do that. So I do have some work back there in D.C., and I'm going to spend as little time there as possible. Mostly I'll be just running around the 29 counties that I represent, but I'm here mostly in Lubbock this week.
Hey, Congressman, as far as the conference goes, now there's the one controversial thing that the Senate had, I guess, was that it had work requirements for those that were getting SNAP or food stamps. Do you think there's any way at all that they're going to be able to get that through the Senate?
Matt, I hope so. I, as a conferee and as a voice for West Texas, I don't think that I will be happy with the Farm Bill that doesn't have welfare to work reforms when we have 7 million surplus jobs and we have 10 million people that for over a year who are able-bodied adults have been receiving food stamps and other government assistance. And I just think that's just it's not good for the recipients who get trapped in a cycle of dependence on government. It's not good for taxpayers, and it's not good for our economy because we have a labor shortage now, and our economy's growing like gangbusters, but we'll feel a little bit of downward pressure now because we need workers, and too many are sidelined because of our current policy. So I'm going to be pushing for it. Now, I will tell you, these are desperate times for our ag economy, and we've had the farm income cut in half over the last 3 years. So it is critical to get the Farm Bill through just for that alone.
Yeah, but Congressman, you're not going to
get something.
You're not going to get a single vote from a Democrat on that, are you?
Well, look, the Senate didn't touch food stamps. We put the work requirements in on the House side. I think we'll get something. Whether it's meaningful or not, I'll let you know. But I'm certainly pushing for some meaningful work requirements, and I think that's.
Okay.
I can't imagine a farm bill that doesn't have.
Okay, Congressman, tell us about these tariffs and how much of a bite are they taking out of the farmer? How bad are they?
I think you're starting to feel in some segments more than others. Pork, soybeans. I mean, our sorghum producers, their export market, 80% of their export market is China. So the president was right, I think, to provide some temporary, what I call disaster relief assistance. I don't think we should live on a program for the trade war that would ensue when the president went after China. I think the president should do a few things. He should stay focused on China and don't broad brush everybody as cheating China. I think we should finish NAFTA. If we could settle that, that'd be a huge relief for our producers, and especially the Mexico side. And then we need to do more free trade deals in the Asia Pacific. Trade, not aid, is the path to prosperity for us, and it's also the best way to put the screws to China.
Congressman, what other differences are there between the Senate bill and the House bill as far as the Farm Bill is concerned?
Well, not a whole lot on the farm policy side. I mean, we all know the safety net is critical to the stability of the ag economy. There's just some little tweaks in there. Let me tell you, I'll give you one example for cotton. There's a program that provides some assistance to textile mills. We don't have a lot of textile mills in this country because you can't operate in competition with other countries that just have a much lower cost of their operations, mainly around labor cost. But if we lose the textile infrastructure, we'll never get it back. Just like if we lose the aluminum extrusion or steel manufacturing. So this is a way to help us keep some capacity, some infrastructure, so that when we produce all this fiber, that we can spin it and we can get it into a final product and not depend on other countries for food and fiber. That's one program that's being phased out, and it certainly has an impact on the cotton industry. And that's something that we're going to work on in the conference committee. I'm certainly have a particular interest in that because of of West Texas and our interest in cotton.
So China has talked about putting on more tariffs now. Are we looking at Donald Trump? Donald Trump had talked about, President Trump had talked about throwing up, I think they said we had something like $500 billion to work with, and China only had about $100 billion to work with. Are we getting close to that point where China really can't do any more, and we're going to be doing a lot more than they can? Or I don't know.
Yes, the answer is yes. I mean, we have more leverage than they do in a number of ways. I think we have what you said, that they import 500 or export over 500 billion to the United States market, and we export to their markets about 100 billion. So, yeah, they're about tapped out, and we can keep going. It's important that we support the president and give him the runways and not blink, because this has happened time and again where we're trying to hold them accountable to playing by the rules like everyone else, and we faded away because of political pressure. That's why I like this president. He is staying with them. He's trying to do some mitigation control on ag and other industries. But in the end, we'll all be better served long term if we can get China to step up and stop stealing, stop dumping, stop circumventing the trade rules, because they're really skewing the markets, and they're I mean, look at the trade deficit that we have with them. Mexico's got a trade deficit with them. Other countries do, but they don't have the guts and they don't have the power that America does and that Donald Trump does. So I'm with him on this. We just have to do the things I said earlier about more free trade, settle NAFTA, et cetera.
Okay, so it looks like the European Union didn't want to go through this, so they kind of, I don't want to use the word folded, but I guess they blinked and decided to go ahead and make a deal with Donald Trump in the United States. Does that give Washington, the people in Washington, any more resolve to continue this path?
It does. I think anytime you've got the administration is opening new markets for example, sorghum producers. So they're trying to ease the blunt of some of the fallout from retaliation. And then you see what happened with Europe. To your point, they don't want to get into a trade war with the U.S. because they believe this president's serious. They actually believe he's going to do what he says he's going to do, just like he has on other issues. So that kind of consistency, whether it's saying that we're going to respond to Syria, to gas and people, or about border security. I mean, having a president that's just doing what he said he's going to do gives us the credibility, not just here at home, but around the world. And so, that Europe, where we say zero tariff, zero subsidy, that's the goal. That's where we want to get to. That's true free market, fair trade dynamics that I support, and I think most free market guys and free traders support. But we don't support an uneven playing field that puts our producers and manufacturers at a disadvantage.
Congressman, let's take this quick break, and then we'll come back and talk on the other side. News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM, KFYO Mornings. Dave King, Matt Martin back on your radio with Congressman Jodey Arrington. Congressman, we had a couple of text messages this morning. One comment from a texter says, cut off China for 2 weeks and they'll be broke. Another texter says, have we not already lost 90% of our fabric mills over the years?
Well, we have taken the last one first. We have lost those fabric mills 90%, but this is a good case study for what happens because of the unevenness of the global marketplace and the fact that you can never compete against, countries that don't have fair labor standards, EPA. They don't have a minimum wage. They pay $2 an hour at best in some cases. And, if you don't have a safety net for agriculture, you'll lose your food infrastructure. And again, I'd argue that's not just a West Texas economic impact issue. That's a national security, food security issue for this country. And so I think that's a case in point. Whether it's steel, aluminum, food, you cannot compete with the low cost and in some cases, certainly with China, with state-sponsored production. I mean, you just can't compete with a country that subsidizes its farmers or its steel manufacturers. So if they can, they'll put us out of the business of making anything, and they'll defeat America without firing a single shot, and that is their plan, in my opinion. And so we have to do things like the Farm Bill safety net and take other measures, or we won't have a great America for our kids.
Well, and don't forget they're stealing all of the intellectual property rights, building off of those and creating things and then selling it back without paying any type of royalties. Yeah.
No, you're right. They just had a big case where two Chinese nationalists essentially were indicted, taking rice seed out of the country so that they could exploit the technology and do exactly what you said. And that just happened recently in the ag biotech space.
Congressman, I don't know whether this is true or not because I saw it on Facebook. So it just said that China, well,
must be true if it's Google or Facebook, right?
Well, it just said that China had dropped its tariff on oil imports from the U.S. Have you?
I hadn't heard that.
Okay, that's probably untrue.
Yeah. Well, I know they have energy-related tariffs. It's hard to keep up with all these tariffs because they're just going tit for tat. But whatever they do to try to, give us and our president to acquiesce, I just think we got to hold the line. I think we have to support this president, hold the line, and do the things we talked about, and we're going to come out on top.
Yeah. So Iran, we did sanctions on Iran, and they seem to already be working. It looks like there's a lot of protests. People aren't very happy about it. And now we're looking at doing sanctions on Russia. Do you know what type of sanctions we're looking at doing on Russia?
Well, we've put in Congress has put economic sanctions that I think are meaningful in Russia. I think that people talk about, and if I might, I don't mean to digress, but this whole Russian collusion and this whole the president is weak on Russia because of his relationship with Putin or because of the collusion issue, which is just a complete farce. Whether it's the largest arms sale to Ukraine or when we went after Syria because they gassed their people with Russia there in support of them, or economic sanctions or kicking 60-some-odd diplomats out of this country that were Russian diplomats, or the Iran deal that we pulled out of, Iran being supported by Vladimir Putin. This president has been in action, tougher on Russia than Obama or probably any past president in recent history. So, yeah, I think he's doing we've got to put the sanctions in. We've got to hold Russia accountable. And I'm glad he pulled out of the Iran deal. I thought that was a sham deal. We can get into the details of it, but just like the Paris Treaty was a sham deal. America would lose in that. We gave everything away. It was just window dressing for politicians to take credit, mainly Obama, for, quote, doing something on that. If you're not doing something meaningful, I'm not impressed with window dressing. I want real deterrence for a nuclear Iran, and I don't want to subsidize China any more than we already are in some climate agreement.
Okay, Congressman, we had a caller this morning that wanted to ask you a question. He says, how do we make sure that the small farmers get the help they need and the big corporate farmers who don't need as much help don't?
Well, there's an issue or provision called the upper payment limit, and so if you're a big corporate farming operation, you're not going to be helped by the safety net, and that's true across the board, no matter what it is, whether it's in dairy or whatever the commodity. So I would argue that the safety net really is for the sort of smaller farmer and medium-sized farming operation. Again, we've lost 50% of farming income over 3 years. We are hurting in ag country and rural America, and the safety net's critical, and I'm glad I'm on the conference committee to make sure we've got a good, responsible safety net to stabilize the economy. But, I hear him, but there's an upper payment limit that prevents the big corporate guys from benefiting from the same safety net that we have for the medium to small farmers.
So, Congressman, you've been in the district, and I think you're going to be in here for a little bit longer. What all do you have going on today?
Well, we're going to be meeting with healthcare folks to talk about rural healthcare and community hospitals there. We had one closed down in Stanford, basically, and that's a problem. We've had 80 closed across the country since Obamacare was introduced. I think they just can't take the cost of the regulations and their thin margins because they don't have a lot of patience.
Well, Congressman, we're running up against the clock, and I hate to cut you off. But
no, that's okay.
But thank you so much for calling, and we'll be talking to you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, guys. God
bless.
bless.
Thanks, Congressman.